there was an article that came out in Pink News in May 2020, and I was so used to them writing about me and writing about the most irrelevant detail and building it up into something shock horror, or just saying very nasty, sly things about me when I was assaulted by a man outside Edinburgh University after I'd been speaking there about male violence at an event. A massive bloke, a trans activist, ran after me and would have knocked me flying had it not been for the 4 security guards that held him off. And immediately they were trying to get a comment from me so that I would confirm my allegations that I had been assaulted. I mean, it was the police took action, it was on CCTV, the security guards were there were lots of witnesses, but it was, oh, I see, so you're making another story up about trans people, are you?
Oh, so that was in the article.
Yeah, horrible, horrible things. Then we get to 2020, and a piece came out by a journalist called Vic Parsons, a they, them.
Narcissist.
A female narcissist, who, and the heading was something like, lesbian speaks out about being trafficked, groomed, coerced into the cult of gender critical. I mean, it was a mad headline, but I got 4 calls the day that it came out, 4 messages on WhatsApp. And I had a very early start the next day, so I just ignored the WhatsApp messages and thought, oh, I'll read it tomorrow, because they were all saying, oh dear, there's a really nasty piece about you in PinkNews, which is our affectionate term, or penis news. And it doesn't name you, but it's so obviously about you. It's awful. Thought we'd better let you know. And the next day when I read it, I thought, well, of course that's me. It has to be me. High profile national journalist who's a lesbian. There isn't anyone else who has been called a TERF.
Oh.
There isn't anybody else.
Yeah, because the only other lesbian I can think of is that the QI woman, but she's the other side of that.
I mean, there's nobody that's been targeted by Pink News.
What's her name, that QI woman?
I don't remember.
Took over from Stephen Fritz, Danish.
But I know, oh yes. Yeah. No.
But I think she's quite woke.
Yes,
she might not be. I can't remember.
She is. And, well, anyway, it had to be me. And also, I knew the person that had given the interview. A young lesbian, lived out in the States, very vulnerable, a fantasist, who I'd spoken to at a request of a mutual friend, who said, look, this woman's coming over to do some panels at our university that I'm affiliated to. And she's really worried that we'll all hate her because she's American or whatever reasons. Have a quick word with her. And I did. It was foolish now, looking back. But I spoke to her, and then she kept wanting to talk. So I just ignored her because I thought I don't have time for this. And she obviously took great offence, felt rejected. And when Vic Parsons, this so-called journalist, went sniffing around, having noticed this young lesbian was making the most outrageous accusations on Twitter about all of us that are called TERFs.
Well, like that you were physical? Sexual?
Oh, no, just that we were trying to groom her to get her to come over to the UK. And apparently I'd offered to find her a wife, to traffic her a bride in. Yeah, I know. And I'd run out of Moldovans that week. So, I mean, that was unlikely to happen.
Yeah.
And so, obviously, Parsons had gone sniffing around. Well, I now know because the woman in question turned against Pink News, as they all do in the end, and told me exactly what had happened. She contacted her. She said, will you do me an interview about this cult, the gender critical cult, and this particular evil monster, Julie Bindel? And then realised when it was legal that they couldn't possibly mention me in the piece because there were no receipts at all. There was no evidence whatsoever. All of the things I was accused of, albeit without them mentioning my name, were things I'd fought against all my adult life. Trafficking, sexual exploitation, grooming, harassment, anti-lesbianism, all of it. I've spent all my life, and this is what they do. It's classic gaslighting. You're accused of doing what you know you haven't done. You know, you want trans babies to be murdered. You're a homophobe. You're a bigot, and you're on the extreme right. Yeah. You're an anti-Semite. All of the things that, you know, we're the opposite of. Yeah. So
you're a massive lefty.
Oh, yeah, I mean, thankfully, I've never been on the hard left. I can't bear those people. Okay. Shoot me now, I don't care. Anyway, I'd die for a valiant cause. So this piece, I got up the next day, read it, And I was sitting at my kitchen table later that day thinking, I don't think I can take this anymore. I really don't. This is just harassment. It's so upsetting. They're accusing me of doing the most heinous things. And they think that just by not naming me, people won't know. And by then, Owen Jones had already retweeted the piece saying, "This is a must-read" by Vic Parsons.
Oh, and he knows.
And he knew who they were talking about. There were all kinds of tranosities, as I call them, absolute barking, trans-identified men who were tweeting saying, "This is Julie Bindel, because look, this woman who's given the interview had already accused her of this online last week." So all of the things were stacking up. And I knew that it was absolutely, without question, actionable. And I'm just sitting, just like this, Andrew, talking to my partner, who's a lawyer. And she was saying, "What are you going to do?" Because she knows fine well that defamation is a huge risk. And then guess what happened? A fairy godmother appeared in my DMs in the shape of JK Rowling.
Shut up.
And said, because we knew each other, but not very well at that stage. And she said, "I think it's disgusting what PinkNews have been doing to you. And I'm always on the free speech side of things, but this is defamation. It's a step too far. And if you want to sue them, I will fund the case."
No. Why didn't I know? Was that not like a publicly known thing?
It's never been public until very shortly, a few weeks ago. Joe and I were having a joke on Twitter, and we were having a joke about PinkNews being in the soup, and angrily joking because it's vile.
Yeah.
And of course there are, if we are to believe the allegations, victims involved here. And she just said, "I think it's about time, don't you, that we let Benji Boy know that I funded your case?" And I said, "Yeah, that's great." And then we made a few other jokes about the only confidential bit of the case is what happened at the mediation. There's no NDA attached to any of the case. The documents are all out there publicly. But I can't possibly say what happened at the settlement agreement.
Gosh, I want to know now.
What's really, really nice, and this is completely unrelated, is that quite shortly afterwards, Kathleen Stock and I set up the Lesbian Project. It's really good, that, isn't it? Because having gone through 18 months of hellish litigation, I decided it would be lovely to do something just for lesbians.
Yeah.
You know, the opposite of what PinkNews would like to see.
They seem to have an issue with lesbians, don't they? And
They do.
Always attacking JK Rowling as well. I mean, JK Rowling just loves gay people. Dumbledore was made gay after the fact, I think.
She's a human rights activist. She gives more to charity than anyone I can think of. The wealth that she distributes amongst those that need it. She's an excellent human being. But, see, they are nasty, spiteful, vicious misogynists. And, well, they got their comeuppance because we put them through 18 months of litigation. And my snout tells me, and of course you never know whether or not this is just made up because they want to impress you, but my person close to PinkNews told me that senior members of staff, which would have included Cohen, kept saying, "She can't go on like this forever. She must be spending, they must have remortgaged the house. I think her partner's parents died recently. Maybe they're spending that money." I mean, as if. They were insured, so they had no risk. But their insurers cannot have been pleased at the amount of money that they spent on this case, which was well over £500,000.
Whoa.
And that's all in public documentation.
And all the while, JK Rowling was
She
funding
was
it.
funding me.
What a legend.
Isn't it great?
Yeah, I absolutely love her. Were you a Harry Potter fan?
No, never read it. Never read a line.
I read it, like all 8 books in 5 languages because I was obsessed with it. And that was a way to learn, because the first book is sort of aimed at children and the last book is aimed at maybe young adults.
Right.
So it becomes more complicated language, and so I recommend anyone learning a language, that's one of the best ways. You start with the first Harry Potter, move up to the next Harry Potters. So I my wife and I are just big Potterheads, although we would never call ourselves that. Actually, it's the first time I've ever said that word. So, yes.
Well, it's down on the record now, and you can't edit yourself out saying that because I'll just tweet about it.
He's a Potterhead, telling JK Rowling, my hero. He says he's a Potterhead. Oh, what a loser.
No, I mean, it just wasn't my thing. And anyway, by the time the books came out, I was well past childhood, and why would I read children's books? But lots of my adult friends did.
My dad did. So there you go.